Hey guys, what's up? Excoundrel here, and it's a video after 2 weeks finally, and it's going to be about the new balance changes. I always like to do this when Vainglory release their balance notes, because we can talk about it and talk about what it means, break it down, see how it might affect the meta, and sort of talk about it in a very candid way. I'm probably going to start creating a lot more gameplay stuff, because I've just realized that I go away quite a lot. So my job is an esports caster, for the most part. And so I travel quite a lot. So I was in Barcelona all of this week doing some League of Legends. And before that I was in France on holiday. And I didn't release any content in that entire time. I should really be uploading stuff and then making it public and having scheduled videos and stuff. So I'm going to aim to do that. I'm going to trial it. It might not be the most entertaining content. It might have to be gameplay videos. But if that's something that you want to see, let me know. I'll be doing sort of PUBG gameplay. I'll be doing Vainglory gameplay. I might do some gameplay of this new game called Command & Conquer Rivals. Probably just going to try out a load of different things and see what works. So, without further ado, let's move on and have a look at the update notes. Right, gameplay balance changes. Double minion camp. Spawn time has gone down to 50 seconds and the respawn time is up to 120 seconds. I think they've done this across the entire board of camps. I think they've made the respawn time 120 seconds for all camps, and I think they have dropped the spawn time of all camps in the jungle to 50 seconds. So this is basically meaning that they really don't want junglers and bot laners to duo against the top laner. It makes it such a crap game for the top laner, because you just sit there 2v1, you can't farm, you can never look for a lane trade, and lane trades are what is exciting in games. So this is an attempt to make the jungle spawn earlier, so that if you do want to duo clear the jungle, you have to miss lane. So basically they're trying to punish a bot laner for wanting to duo clear the jungle with the jungler. And this also means that the jungler now has to start his jungle early. We'll have to see how much this affects the top lane. We'll talk about it as we go through and see if there's any other changes. But it's essentially for the very start, basically meaning that you maybe miss a wave and a half if you try and clear the jungle as a bot laner duo with your jungle. So you can definitely potentially miss out quite a lot, and then the enemy can shove your lane in. So it's basically, you know, all the minion wave speed changes, they try to up the speed of the minions over and over again to try and do this. Now they're saying, okay, jungle is going to spawn earlier. So now you have very quick minions and the jungle is spawning earlier, meaning that they're really trying to punish laners for leaving that lane and clearing with their jungler. Armory's respawn time is up. This is an interesting one. I did feel that armories were respawning quite quickly. I don't ever think it had a massive impact in the game, but they really want to make sure that once you take an armory, it's meaningful, but there is some kind of slim comeback mechanic for the enemy. Again, just across the board, this is a really random place to put the armories, by the way. I think they must have just put that in the wrong bit. Healing treant spawn time and healing treant experience. They're also trying to cut the experience that you get for stealing the healing treants away. So basically, because these are really easily accessible, it's very easy, especially when you're dominating lane, to kind of hamper the enemy jungler and get a massive experience lead on your lane opponent. So they're trying to, I think, centralize jungle experience to make it that you have to be further away from lanes to get the most benefit from the jungle, which means you can't just sit in a lane, take a healing camp, then rotate back to lane, especially if you're duo bot mid. And again, same thing across. Hero vision range has gone up, so you'll be able to see just a little bit more, which is interesting. We'll have to see. I don't know how much that will affect. Don't think it'll affect that much, but it's definitely good for longer range heroes anyway. Let's have a look. Adagio, gift of fire damage, base damage down by 10 every level. Crystal ratio is up, health ratio is down. So that's a 25% nerf to his health ratio. That's interesting because Adagio was one of those top laners that didn't require much gold investment, and they're nerfing him, especially with capacitor plate being so strong. He's getting a slight nerf here overall. The crystal ratio going up means they're trying to say, if you want to play Adagio as a carry, we really want you to be playing him in the full crystal route, not this kind of capacitor plate full tank Adagio that still somehow has massive impact. Alpha took a couple of nerfs recently. And they're giving her some late game scaling on her attack speed, which is mainly good for her weapon power, but you will notice that you'll be able to maintain your core charge stacks easier in CP as well. But realistically, this is all a weapon power change, so weapon power alpha is going to scale a bit harder now, especially when you go that breaking point build. So this is quite a good change for Weapon Power Alpha. You'll see quite a considerable increase in her attack speed in the late game. She could be good. She could be good. I'd have to test how much impact that this has in terms of her actual late game attack speed, but I feel like it's good enough to make her weapon power build path scale quite hard. Fearsome Shade cooldown down, which is cool. I think that was something that was negatively affected by the echo changes, and this is something that Batiste probably needed just to make sure he could still remain impactful. So he's going to have this, especially as Captain Batiste, or any kind of Batiste really, is going to make good use out of this if they don't have much cooldown reduction in their kit. Rocket Launcher, splash damage is up, so this is his heroic perk. The percentage on his weapon power damage is up. The Porcupine Mortar energy cost is down at all levels as well. So a buff for weapon power Baron for sure. That's a massive buff in terms of the splash damage. So maybe, I mean, it's definitely going to increase his effectiveness in 5v5, I can tell you that. And his Porcupine Mortar cost, energy cost, is down, meaning that CP Baron in the late game is going to have a whale of a time as well. So overall, nice buffs for Baron. This might be enough to make him more effective in 5v5. I did feel like his splash damage was kind of lackluster, going up to 80%. It's a pretty big deal. It's quite a lot of damage that you can deal across a multitude of targets. Weapon ratio on point, up. Well, I think Blackfeather was an okay spot. I feel like his weapon power build path was fine. Just slightly increasing his on-point weapon ratio means that you're going to feel more effective using it, and it will start. You don't really build a huge amount of weapon power on Blackfeather anyway, so it's not like you stack a crazy amount of weapon power. But when you build up those breaking point stacks, this is going to hurt a lot. This on point is going to start to hurt a lot. So that's actually a significant enough change for weapon power Blackfeather. So especially when you get your Serpent's Mask breaking point build with some defense completed, you stack up in a fight, that on point is actually going to start to chunk a lot more. Obviously, nothing but good with Blackfeather, and I still think he was a decent side lane pick anyway. The only reason that you didn't see him in the last meta is that he didn't really deal with 2v1s particularly well until level 6. So he got really punished in the early lane because he really needed gold. So any top laner that needed gold was kind of sucky in the last meta because of the 2v1 meta. So that's why you saw a lot of Arden with capacitor plate top. That's why you saw a lot of Adagio with capacitor plate top, because they didn't really need the gold. They could pick up that one item and be useful to the team. Let's have a look at Churnwalker. Futility of life chain healing up. Cooldown massively down on his change, and damage per seconds up at overdrive on hook and chain. So that's really big. That is actually really big. This is overall with some massive changes for Churnwalker. The reason I don't think Churnwalker was in a bad spot. I think the reason we didn't see him was because the capacitor captain meta was so big. The feeling that I get from Niv and the balance team is that they're doing a multitude of things to try and increase the diversity, so that capacitor play obviously makes certain captains good. Churnwalker can't benefit from that a lot, so by buffing Churnwalker, you're getting a choice to make between actually having a really strong captain that doesn't have some of the same utility that a capacitor plate captain would have, but he's just damn good if you play him right. So the cooldown on hook and chain going down means that it's less punishing if you miss one, especially in 5v5, so that's pretty decent. The damage going up means you might be able to wombo combo nicely as well, and the chain healing going up means that you're a bit more sustainable and durable in those big 5v5 team fights. This might be enough to make Churnwalker good. It just depends on how the capacitor plate plays out. If capacitor meta fizzles out a little bit, Churnwalker will be pretty decent, I think. Absolutely. Flicker, Mooncloak cooldown down by a considerable amount. I still don't think this is going to make Flicker good. I think Flicker is a super snowbally captain in 5v5. I think he's a good CP bruiser top. The ultimate is so difficult to coordinate in solo queue. Like when you use the ultimate, it's usually to like barrel in on the backline, but because there is vision pretty much everywhere on 5v5, like scout cams exist, everybody has access to them. Someone's gonna get caught out, like running over a scout cam at some point. So it's the very core of Flicker kind of sucks versus the amount of vision that there is available on 5v5, which kind of puts him in a tough spot. He also kind of sucked if you had a good captain on 3v3, because scout traps just, you know, littered everywhere, did the same thing. I think what would make Flicker good is that he doesn't de-stealth, or at least he gets a period of grace when he attacks a scout cam when trying to de-stealth, because one of the benefits of Flicker is that he can clear scout cams automatically. It makes him a vision sweeping machine. But when you have someone who upgrades their scout cams, or even when they're not upgraded, he has to stealth, attack, re-stealth, attack, re-stealth, attack, re-stealth, attack. That's 4 hits on just a single scout cam. So maybe he's granted a period of true sight once he reveals himself. That might help him be a bit more effective in 5v5. But I don't think this is not doing enough, I think, to make Flicker any good. This was already the hotfix damage. The hotfix stuff that happened to Grace. There was a bug on weapon ratio on Benediction, basically nerfing over all the base damage and the weapon ratio there, meaning that you get a bit more impact when you use your A, but less impact when you're just randomly basic attacking people. I think it kind of killed off Weapon Grace a little bit, definitely. But obviously her ultimate is still an issue, because that can come off cooldown really quickly, so people can often still play off-tank Grace and just have her for her ultimate. So she's still a good captain, I feel, and can be played pretty well as a weapon power off-tank. So I just think the full weapon power Grace is going to struggle. Grumpshaw needed some love. Damage reduction up to 6%, which means he's going to get a maximum damage reduction of 30% overall. That's pretty good, like a natural 30% damage reduction. I always thought Grumpshaw was a really good top laner. I think Grumpshaw could be a good top laner again, depending on the meta, and also still, you know, has some viability in the jungle. I think there are other junglers that are better than Grumpshaw, but I personally really like him top lane, and I think we'll have to see if that pans out. Rocket Leap cooldown is down. I don't think this is gonna. This is one of those things where you just increase Jules' mobility from a long cooldown to a slightly less long cooldown. It's not going to have a significant enough impact on her in the meta to make her good. Jules really has one role in 5v5, and that's the split push. Changing Rocket Leap cooldown is not going to change that. I was talking to Niv about it, and I'd say if you want Jules to be meta in 5v5 especially, I think she needs to have something like Koshka, the Koshka treatment, where if you jump in and you hit Rocket Leap on people, so if you use your Rocket Leap to be aggressive in a fight, you should be rewarded with a barrier. Not a huge barrier, but a barrier that will make you slightly more durable, maybe allow you to get 1 or 2 of your Bs off, so that you actually have your impact in the backline. But for this, I mean, Jules going to have her place that she's always had. She's a side lane split pusher. Not really in meta right now because she needed gold to be good. So, and she was kind of outclassed in the bot lane by people like Vox. But if it gets to a point where we have more split push side lane meta coming out, Jewel will be there. She'll still be doing her thing. She still takes turrets really quickly. More nerfs to Kensei. Overall damage reduction to his A and more weapon power ratio on his barrier being sort of nerfed even more. It's a pretty significant nerf if you think about it. It's about 20%, something like that. A 20% nerf to his weapon ratio on that. I still think Kensei will be good. I genuinely do. I think all these nerfs over and over again. His early game's going to suck even more. His early game is going to suck even more. He can be punished early game, but I think once you get to late game, Kensei's still going to be pretty solid. I'd have to test out his barrier, but you know, the more breaking point stacks you get, you're still going to have a really big barrier. So I still think Kensei will be good. I still think people will ban him this patch. I feel like overall he just needs an attack speed nerf, or he needs to have more hits to get his passive. But overall, it's the right direction for Kensei. He needs to be nerfed. He's getting banned consistently. No one's even getting to play him. But I still think he'll be good. This is actually a massive change, and I know people are going to be really upset about it. Or at least a lot of people will be upset about it. You can't trigger active camos with Spellfire. I actually think the people who liked playing CP Kestrel before, and who are good at CP Kestrel will still play CP Kestrel. It just means your average player, like me, who just bought Spellfire, spammed active camo traps all over the place, is going to struggle with CP Kestrel again. It was very uninteractive to have a Spellfire ticking and then you walk into a trap. It definitely felt uninteractive. It definitely felt confusing for the enemy players. And I think this is a good change for Kestrel. It means if you really are a master of CP Kestrel, you can still maintain that prowess. A little bit more difficult to make it happen in 5v5. Just because of the vulnerability of CP Kestrel when she reveals herself. But overall, a good change for pretty much everybody else. Reducing the cooldown on Koshka. Koshka kind of fell out of meta a little bit. She wasn't kind of like a super high priority pick in the jungle. The Pouncy Fun cooldown means she's going to be sort of, I guess, compensate a little bit for the movement speed nerfs that she had fairly recently. Whether it will make her meta or not, it really depends on the style of jungle meta that we see. Like, if these jungle changes do have the effect where ganking junglers are going to be back in meta, Koshka is definitely going to be strong. If somehow this meta revolves around still seeing a 2v1 bot lane, Koshka will not be good because she doesn't really offer anything to a 2v1. Let's have a look. Ooh, stamina generation per second up and stamina cost down on Githian Wool. It's really big for Lance. They really want to push this weapon power Lance thing. The stamina generation per second going up is a pretty big deal. Because your full combo pretty much took away your entire stamina pool. So you could probably get your full combo off and then get another ability in fairly quick succession after that. So that's actually massive for Lance, with the stamina of Githian Wool going down as well. Really good for Captain Lance as well, right? Honestly, Lance just getting buff after buff after buff here. Weapon Power Lance is still something that I think works from the jungle, especially if the ganking jungle work comes back into meta. I actually think it works in the 2v1 scenario as well, because the pressure you could put on lane. So Lance, I think, will be good this update, like really good. 25% nerf to Lyra's Imperial Sigil with Capacitor Plate. That makes sense. She was just dealing too much healing, and she was like a 100% pick or ban in most scenarios. Nerfs across the cooldowns for everything for Meline. It definitely means that Aftershock is probably going to be necessary on her, because these are some pretty significant nerfs. 1 second. Sorry guys, I've got a bit of a cold, had to sniff, didn't want you to hear that. So I feel like Aftershock is definitely going to be necessary on her. It kind of was necessary on her, or was meta on her anyway. I genuinely still think Meline will work. I like these 2 second nerfs and 2 seconds nerfs across the board. I still think you'll see Meline played. Whether she'll be top priority, I don't know. But I do think you'll still see Meline get played, because she still has her ultimate, which counts as an ability. She still has sort of, remember, these are just 3 abilities out of 6 that are getting changed, or 5 rather, because your ultimate is basically the same ability. So I genuinely think Meline will still be played. It's only cooldown nerfs. Her damage is still going to be there. Overall, her damage is going to see a bit of a drop-off, but I think overall, especially if you go Clockwork and Aftershock in one build, Meline will still get the play that you would expect to see from her. Bangarang dash speed is up and end delay is down. That's a nice quality of life change for Ozo. It'll make him more impactful on 3v3 especially. Top lane weapon power Ozo was pretty good, and this will just make him a bit more impactful, especially in 5v5 at seeking out that specific target and making it harder to reflex block, although I do think it will still be pretty easy to reflex block. Pet health crystal ratio, I mean, Petal's just garbage, and I think this is not going to make her any less garbage. Maybe her pets are more durable in 5v5, but I don't think so. Make her pretty good in 3v3 still, though, so Petal's probably still fine in 3v3. Valkyrie cooldown going down, nice quality of life change, but nothing major for Rhyme. He still has his specific place. And the reason you didn't really see him picked is because bot lane was traditionally for weapon power carries. Top lane he didn't do very well 2v1, and he's only very good in certain matchups in 5v5. And even then, you take Rhyme to a 5v5 team fight, there's more chance that there's someone that's going to blow up Rhyme, because there's always guaranteed to be at least one ranged in form of a mage or a weapon power carry. That Rhyme was a little bit outdated in that respect, because Rhyme was traditionally good in 3v3 versus full melee comps. That's where he kind of ate everybody alive. In 5v5, there is so much hard CC and so many ranged heroes that come to the table that Rhyme just finds it very difficult to function. He'd need some sort of movement speed related changes. Maybe if you hit your A, you get a small movement speed buff. That would make him busted in 3v3, but it would make him more viable in 5v5. The Rhyme is just like a very specific counter who could probably split push as his only role, because in a full 5v5 team fight, unless he's massively ahead, it's just so hard for him to actually get to the backline. He'd only be good against a heavy dive composition, and even then a heavy dive composition is usually always supplemented by a ranged mage in the backline, that he would still be fairly susceptible to that. Reza, crystal ratio on fire started down. Maybe they just felt Reza was too strong. I still think Reza will be fine, and I still think he'll be a top tier pick. The 5% nerf's not enough to say he wouldn't be, I don't think. Let's have a look into the fray. Rupture damage is to minions is just, so the rupture damage did a different amount of damage to minions, so now it's just going to deal 50% of your actual rupture damage. I'm guessing this will help her wave clear a bit more. Unless they're keeping it roughly the similar. But yeah, that was just to maybe help her clear waves a bit better. Red Mist cooldown down, damage per second up, fortified life per second up again. These are the nerfs that they've basically reverted on Rona because she got put into a tough space. Again, Rona is a good laner, and I still think Rona is fine. She kind of gets outclassed in the bot lane because of some of the picks that you see down there. But this will be enough to bring Rona into a situation where she's definitely more durable and more viable in 5v5 team fights. So that's good. Good for Rona. I don't know why this change was that much needed, but if you're trying to gut Samuel, let's gut him even harder, I guess. Don't think these changes were absolutely necessary, but Samuel still does lots of things very well, and the Drifting Dark changes alone, he does revolve around this ability. Remember, this ability is primarily the one that he uses to be good, especially in the late game. 3 seconds, you apply cooldown reduction to that, etc. You'll see a minimal difference in the late game Samuel Drifting Dark cooldown, maybe 1.2, 1.3 seconds max. Samuel will still have his place, and I think cooldown changes are always a bit of a big deal, but not enough of a big deal to say he's going to be crap. He's still going to be good. Health and Sky goes up, a little bit of a quality of life change. Sky still has her very specific circumstances where she's good. Counter to Vox in the bot lane, weapon power counters in certain side lanes. Her CP build path kind of feels a bit clunky on 5v5, but it's a nice change. You'll probably see a bit more effectiveness out of 3v3 with this. The weapon ratio, originally this was 150% by the way, but when they actually released it, they toned it down to 100%. They want it somewhere in the middle. Weapon power attacker, I think, is okay, but again, he's not like CP Tacker. The reason CP Tacker always did well is he could X-Retso in, he would then use his Chitin and then use his Kaku to escape, reset, do the same thing again. So he was very difficult to pin down for large periods of time unless you had vision. The problem with weapon power attacker is that he has to constantly basic attack. So you're never going to get effectiveness out of Kaku. You're never going to get that elongated stealth. You just have to keep going at someone. So you're like a melee bruiser, not a melee assassin when you're weapon power attacker. And you don't quite have the same burst damage you did as the CP build path. So you have to kind of build him tanky, and that means his overall damage output is going to be lower. And then you're like, why would I pick Tacker over other weapon power bruisers like Blackfeather? You wouldn't, unless you're just trying to directly get to the backline, but Blackfeather does that anyway. So I feel like weapon power Tacker is just like a worse version of weapon power Blackfeather. He just has a little bit more direct mobility. But weapon power Blackfeather does better with tanky items and a lower cost weapon power build. So yeah, weapon power attacker just feels like a worse version of weapon power Blackfeather, really. Sonic Zoom cooldown up again, and damage is up again. Man, they really don't want Vox to be meta, but he's still going to be meta. This is a significant change for him in the early game. And 1 second extra in the late game is significant, but he does get an extra 10% damage boosts on his 2 shots, so he's going to be dealing 140% weapon power when he overdrives his Sonic Zoom, which means he's going to stack breaking points still well. You just have to be a bit more careful about when you use your Sonic Zoom, but I still think, yeah, Vox is still going to be fine, still going to be great. Melee healing up on Book of Eulogies, that makes top laners that rely on melee top laners that relied on Book of Eulogies a bit more effective. Healing amplification down by 25%, so 5% nerf overall. When I say 25%, I mean 5%, that is 25%. 5% is 25% of 20%, so it's a 25% net change, but obviously just a 5% change in terms of absolute value. It was really strong. 5% is, especially with the Lyra and Adagio nerfs, good enough to have a significant impact. It will still be fine on people like Ardent. I still think Capacitor Plate is a great item. Price on Coat of Plates down. Crystal Power up on Eve of Harvest, great, because this was like the worst CP item in the game. The problem with Eve of Harvest is the need for CP sustain in 5v5 is much less warranted than in 3v3, because you have so many other avenues of keeping yourself alive. In 3v3, CP sustain, because there are less people to protect you and it's easier to get to you as a threat, was absolutely necessary. In 5v5, I would say CP sustain is absolutely outclassed by cooldown. And honestly is not super necessary because you have 4 other members of your team that are either protecting you or providing another threat. So CP sustain is less necessary in 5v5. I think Eve of Harvest would need to have some cooldown reduction added to it, or just an overall rework in general, because if you want it, I think the problem is it's still good in 3v3, so you can't change it that much. It's just that the need for 5v5 sustain is less so. And if I'm a 4-item CP carry, where I want to have either Dragon's Eye or Shatterglass, I'm going to need Broken Myth because of the shield. I want to have Clockwork, specifically because of the cooldown. Then I make the decision between having extra damage and damage over time with Spellfire, or some CP sustain, but with lower CP on the item. I would always choose Spellfire, because it's just a better item. So the problem, and you don't really, when you've got Clockwork, you don't need another source of energy regen, so you never really need Eve of Harvest in that respect. But it will make it really good in 3v3 for sure. Kinetic Shield price down, all of the price down on the upgrades, but the price is up on the initial buy, and the shield is up. So it's going to make, do you remember I did that defense video? I'll link it in the description if you haven't seen. This is going to make light armor and light shield amazing in the early game. Like if you buy this, invest the resources, you're going to see like a 30% damage reduction overall just by having a 300 gold investment. So really good item to buy. It also means buying it as a starting item is going to feel less crap on 5v5 because you had 50 gold just randomly sat in your inventory. Now you can buy it as a starting item if you want to lane against, or you know you're laning against someone in a hard lane, and you'll have to spend all your gold. Critical chance up, critical damage down. Okay. Yes. That's going to make, I guess there's some changes. We'll have a look down there in a second. We'll talk about it when we get to the full crit changes. Poison Shiv, attack damage down. Wow. I mean, necessary because Poison Shiv was being used pretty much every single game on most weapon power carries. This is going to indirectly nerf Blackfeather, Kensei, Vox, Rona. Who else? Anybody that uses this. Anybody that uses Poison Shiv is going to get an indirect nerf here. And with the healing meta kind of trying to be pushed out the window, maybe we see Poison Shiv picked up by less people. I still think it's just a good item for sustain weapon power carries. I still think you'll see it on Blackfeather, Kensei. You'll probably... well, Rona doesn't really use it. She uses it in a weird build. Blackfeather only uses it when he needs to have mortal wounds, but... Poison Shiv, like for Vox now, is going to indirectly nerf Vox. So with the changes to Vox's dash and the changes to this, that's an indirect nerf to Vox. He can still build other things, but that Poison Shiv was like a core item for him. So, and Glaive also will see a little bit of a nerf from this as well. Overall, an item that was pretty much used 24/7, and the attack damage nerf here means that it's going to be more punishing to buy this when you don't absolutely need it. Like if you don't need the mortal wounds, if you don't need the mortal wounds from Poison Shiv, then this item is going to feel pretty bad to buy, because that's a 25% attack damage nerf. Pulse Weave, base slow strength down, and health scaling up down to 0.01%. Apparently there was a bug with Pulse Weave where certain heroes could achieve like a 99% slow based on their total health. So this is just, I think, like a bug correction. But overall, this item still has its place in what it did previously. Spellfire burn damage. Okay, I mean, I was just talking about Spellfire and how I prefer it over Eve of Harvest. Again, it's the same reason the Poison Shiv sees changes. Like, you want this to be an item that you buy when you need to have the mortal wounds, not an item that you buy all the time. I still think you'll buy this item over Eve of Harvest though, and I still think this item will be used on CP carries, but that's a 33% nerf to the top end base damage on burn, but you still get the scaling from your own CP. Attack speed down, critical damage up, and critical chance. Okay, so no actual critical chance change to the overall items. It just means that when you build into it, you're going to get a compensation for the critical damage going down to 5%, and the critical chance going up. So there's a little bit of a compensation, like an overall balance of damage on Lucky Strike. And Tornado Trigger, critical damage coming back. It still has its old passive. I don't know. I think Tornado Trigger is a pretty solid item, especially on Ringo, for instance. This is still a great item, and definitely will see some play. I think you might even see like a direct replacement for attack speed items in some build. Tornado Trigger is kind of creeping into the meta as a potential replacement for the nerfs to the Poison Shiv there. So that's really interesting. Talent changes. I don't play talent modes, but I should probably start playing talent modes because a lot of people are interested in that. And I don't really have any talents though, so... Right, thank you very much, guys, and hopefully that was a good explanation of everything, and I will see you soon.